the ghost ship of the Pacific. In the vast, churning expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where the horizon blends seamlessly with the sky and land, is an unimaginable memory. There are moments when the natural world shows us something so profoundly baffling that it defies all logic and reason. This is one of those stories. It's a story about a ship, a seasoned crew, and a mystery so deep and cold that even the most hardened investigators were left with more questions than answers. It's a tale that has been whispered among sailors and armchair detectives for decades, a legend that haunts the quiet stillness of the open water. Before we dive into the chilling details of what happened aboard the SS Andromeda, I have a question for you. Have you ever wondered what happens when the universe's most perplexing riddles unfold in real time? If so, you're in the right place. So make sure you hit that subscribe button for more strange, dark, and mysterious content from the Tangled Logic channel. The SS Andromeda was a vessel built for the long haul, a cargo ship that had seen more sunrises and sunsets than most people see in a lifetime. Commanded by Captain Silas Vance, a man with salt in his veins and a reputation for quiet competence. The ship was a floating home for its 19-person crew. On a blustery day in early April 1978, the Andromeda departed from the port of Seattle, bound for the bustling docks of Sydney, Australia. The voyage was routine, the cargo manifest was straightforward, and the crew was a mix of grizzled veterans and eager young hands. Everything about the departure was as ordinary as a Tuesday morning. Captain Vance's final log entry, scribbled just a few days into their journey, reads simply, "All well. Seas are calm. Making good time." It was a log entry that would become a haunting testament to a tranquility that was about to be shattered in the most inexplicable way imaginable. Weeks turned into a month, and the Andromeda fell off the grid. This wasn't entirely unusual for a long-haul voyage in the late 70s, but it was enough to raise eyebrows. Maritime authorities started sending out passive alerts. It wasn't a distress call, but a general query to any ships in the same area. Was anyone seeing the Andromeda? Had anyone heard from them? The silence was absolute. No one had. It was as if the ship, a vessel of steel and immense weight, had been swallowed whole by the ocean, leaving no trace behind. The families of the crew began to worry, and the shipping company, initially calm, started to escalate its concerns. The vast Pacific, which had seemed so benign in Captain Vance's last log entry, had suddenly become a monstrous, silent tomb. Then, on May 20th, 1978, the Japanese fishing trawler Kuroshio Maru spotted something on the horizon that shouldn't have been there. It was a large cargo ship, drifting aimlessly in the open water, far from any shipping lane. The trawler's captain tried to hail the vessel on the radio, but received no response. As they drew closer, a wave of unease washed over them. The ship's exterior was pristine, showing no signs of storm damage, collision, or fire. Its name, the SS Andromeda, was still clearly visible on the bow. The trawler crew cautiously maneuvered alongside and, seeing no one on the deck, decided to board. What they found on the ship was so bizarre, so chillingly perfect, that it would forever etch itself into the annals of maritime mysteries. The interior of the Andromeda was a scene of almost eerie normalcy. In the galley, a half-eaten meal sat on a table, a plate of spaghetti and a partially filled glass of water, as if the crew had simply stood up and walked away mid-dinner. The coffee maker was still warm to the touch. In the crew quarters, books lay open on bunks, cigarettes were still in an ashtray, and personal items were undisturbed. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no ransacking. The ship's lifeboat was still lashed in its place, and the distress signals were inactivated. The engine room was silent, but an inspection revealed no mechanical failures. The ship was, by all accounts, perfectly seaworthy. It was a ghost ship in the truest sense of the word, a vessel perfectly preserved, except for the complete absence of its human occupants. News of the discovery sent shockwaves through the maritime community. Investigators from multiple nations descended on the Andromeda, meticulously searching for clues. The first and most obvious theory was piracy, but this was quickly dismissed. All of the ship's valuable cargo was still secured in its holds. There was no evidence of forced entry or a struggle. Why would pirates go to the trouble of boarding a ship only to leave the crew and the cargo behind? The theory simply didn't make sense. Next, they considered a sudden, violent storm. But the weather reports for that region on the day of the last log entry showed nothing more than light winds and calm seas. Furthermore, if a rogue wave had swept the crew overboard, why was the ship itself left completely untouched and still so pristine? The next theory to be explored was mutiny. Perhaps a violent disagreement broke out among the crew, leading to a confrontation that ended with all hands lost at sea. But again, the evidence simply wasn't there. A mutiny would almost certainly have left signs of a struggle, broken furniture, scattered belongings, or, at the very least, signs of a fight. Instead, the ship's interior was as tidy as if the crew had just finished their daily duties and gone to bed. There were no bloodstains, no bullet casings, no weapons. The serenity of the scene was one of its most baffling aspects. Every theory that relied on a violent event, be it from external or internal forces, was quickly and completely debunked by the physical evidence or lack thereof. Investigators then turned their attention to the ship's logbook. This was where the greatest hope lay for finding a clue. A logbook is a ship's diary, a daily record of its journey, and a crucial tool for understanding what happened. But as the investigators opened it, they were met with a blank page. The last entry was Captain Vance's initial, "All well" message. Every page after that was pristine and empty. It was as if someone had deliberately stopped writing. But why? If the crew had abandoned ship, there would have been a final entry explaining the reason. If they had been attacked, the logbook would likely have been left open or even destroyed. The blank pages added another layer to the already impenetrable mystery. As the months passed, the authorities felt as though they were hitting a brick wall. The mystery of the SS Andromeda seemed destined to remain unsolved. Then, a forensic team made a quiet, unsettling discovery in the captain's private quarters. Tucked away beneath a loose floorboard, they found a small, locked metal box. Inside, there was no treasure or secret cargo manifest. Instead, there was a single, tightly folded piece of paper. When unfolded, the paper contained a cryptic message written in Captain Vance's neat, spidery handwriting. It simply read, "They are not coming from the sea. They are coming from the sky." The note offered no further explanation, no context, and no clear recipient. The note was authenticated as the captain's, but what on earth did it mean? The note changed everything. It took the investigation from a straightforward, if baffling, maritime mystery and propelled it into the realm of the truly bizarre. The authorities considered if the captain had been suffering from a delusion or had a breakdown, but his medical records were clean, and his crew would have surely noticed if their captain was mentally unstable. Was it a code, a warning, a final, desperate act of communication? It suggested an external, non-human force at play. The phrase "from the sky" led some to speculate on everything from military experiments gone wrong to, in the most extreme corners of the internet, alien abduction. It was a single, tantalizing clue in an ocean of nothingness, and it only served to deepen the enigma. One investigator, a man named Thomas Reed, became obsessed with the case. He spent years tracking down anyone who had ever known Captain Vance. He found no evidence of a secret life, no enemies, and no reason why the captain would have been targeted. Reed came to believe that the note was not a delusion, but a desperate and accurate assessment of a horrifying situation. He theorized that some unknown and possibly non-terrestrial intelligence had descended upon the Andromeda, while it was at its most vulnerable, in the middle of the open sea. But he could never find a shred of evidence to support the idea. Every piece of logic, every rational explanation, simply led to another dead end. The Andromeda was eventually towed to a port where it became a morbid curiosity, a monument to an unsolved disappearance. Visitors would stand on the deck, peering into the silent corridors, imagining the ghost crew that had vanished without a trace. The ship became a place of legends, a place where sailors would tell stories of hearing phantom whispers and seeing figures in the fog. These were just stories, of course, but the quiet emptiness of the vessel was enough to make even the most hardened skeptic feel a chill. The silence of the Andromeda was louder than any storm, a permanent testament to the fact that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be a reminder of the things we do not know and the forces we cannot understand. In the years that followed, the theories grew more and more outlandish. A few brave souls tried to find a link between the Andromeda and other unsolved disappearances in the Pacific, but there was no discernible pattern. The note from Captain Vance, with its chilling message, was dismissed by many as a red herring, the final deranged scribbling of a man succumbing to cabin fever. But for those who spent time on the ship, there was a feeling of profound wrongness. They would say it was a place where time had stopped, a floating museum of a moment that could never be explained. The half-eaten meal, the open book, the warm coffee maker, they all pointed to a sudden, instantaneous event that left no room for preparation or escape. The final piece of this confounding puzzle was the last known photograph of the crew. Taken just a week into their voyage, it was a simple snapshot of the 19 men gathered on the deck, smiling and looking healthy and happy. There was nothing out of the ordinary about them. The picture showed a vibrant, living crew, full of hopes and dreams, unaware of the inexplicable fate that awaited them just a few short weeks later. The contrast between the image and the silent, empty ship was a haunting one. It was a picture of life, taken on a vessel that had become a monument to death, and a chilling reminder that no matter how advanced our technology becomes, there are still things in this world that are beyond our comprehension. The case of the SS Andromeda became a file that was officially closed, marked as unsolved. But in the minds of the investigators and the families of the lost crew, the case was never truly over. It was a wound that refused to heal, a question that could never be answered. The ship itself was eventually sold for scrap, dismantled piece by piece, as if to erase the memory of the mystery it held. But the legend of the ghost ship of the Pacific lives on, a chilling tale of a crew that disappeared into thin air and left nothing behind but a perfectly preserved vessel and a single cryptic note that only served to deepen the mystery. It remains one of the most compelling and confounding cases in maritime history. So, the question remains, what happened to the crew of the SS Andromeda? Was it a rogue wave that hit so perfectly it didn't damage the ship? Was it some kind of new, silent weapon that left no trace? Or was Captain Vance's final note a desperate warning, a clue to something far more bizarre and far more terrifying than anyone could have ever imagined? Maybe it's not about finding the answer, but about accepting that there are some things in this world that we are not meant to understand. The sea is a place of endless secrets, and perhaps the SS Andromeda and its vanished crew are just one of them. The truth, in this case, remains lost at sea. And so we're left with the silent, empty decks of the SS Andromeda and a chilling riddle that has no solution. The story of a crew that vanished without a trace serves as a stark reminder that even in our modern world, with all its technology and knowledge, there are still things that can happen that simply cannot be explained. It's a terrifying thought, but it's one that forces us to confront the fact that we don't know everything. And perhaps we never will. Before you go, if you're as obsessed with the strange, the dark, and the mysterious as I am, be sure to subscribe to Tangled Logic and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to go down another internet rabbit hole, because sometimes you have to go a little crazy to understand the mysteries of the world.